Here we go. Hello everyone, welcome to Makeover Monday Viz Review for week 9 of 2021. And I'm super excited to welcome Priya to this episode and the next episodes for March. Welcome Priya.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm really excited to look at some vizzes today.
Excellent. And tell us a little bit, for those who don't know you, I mean everyone should, but those who don't, how did you come to Makeover Monday?
So when I was applying to the data school, I heard that the Makeover Monday would be really great to learn like how to viz and kind of design, and also just get me started. I was completely new, and it really just getting the feedback really allowed me to improve a lot. So I really dedicate all my improvements to Makeover Monday.
Excellent. And you did land the job at the data school, and even before you started, you were already a Tableau public ambassador.
Yeah, I mean, it's still kind of crazy that happened, but I'm just so grateful, and just it's a great opportunity. And yeah, I just love being part of this community and just learning from everyone as well.
That's excellent. And so you've come to the other side of the table. You had a lot of feedback during this review from us, and now you're joining me for the month of March to give people feedback, which I'm really excited about, especially because you've now had a few months of training at the data school.
Yeah, exactly. And I really hope I can maybe give some suggestions to help people, because I know how much this helped me as well. So hopefully I can help.
Excellent. Okay, well, let's get right into it. I'm going to move over to Twitter, so people won't see us anymore, but they will see my screen. And today we are going to start. Actually, we're gonna come back to Sam Epley, for somehow he snuck to the top of the list. We're gonna go in chronological order. What I've done again is I've created a collection of as many varied vizzes as possible. Please take the feedback that we give to everyone and apply it to your own viz, even if we have to skip yours or you are not on this list. Okay, we're going to start with Michelle, because Michelle has been very, what do you call it? Like, she hasn't submitted that many to this review because, she doesn't want to take up our time given how much feedback she's already received. But I thought it was a great viz to actually talk about. So let's do that. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And Priya, I'm keen to hear your first impression with this viz, with maybe the colors, the layout. What's your first thoughts?
So I actually think she posted a revised version of this viz where it's just the line chart as well. But
Okay.
I have the bar chart one open, so I'll talk about that first. I really like how it's just focusing with one color, so it has blue. And I like how Sweden's highlighted in blue. And I really like how she focused on that particular country because it had the highest percentage. And I really like the insights around the line chart too. I think that they kind of provide more information. And I remember Michelle saying how she thinks the bar chart was a bit redundant, so she removed it. But I actually quite like the bar chart. But I can see how maybe the line chart on its own might work better. But I'd love to know what you think too.
Yeah. And I agree. So I tend to always open the interactive version so that I have the latest one automatically. And what I really like you said, is that focus on Sweden, because for me as an audience with, reasonable understanding of data and data viz, it's easier to grasp a story that's more focused rather than trying to take in, all of Europe or maybe even the whole world at once. I love the line chart for context because it just positions Sweden very quickly, but I don't necessarily need to explore all the different items. I'm just like, oh yeah, they're at the top. Let me move on to the right. And that's when I look at the bar chart. And like you, I think it's really useful, especially with that kind of parity line. Oh, I'm not sure who's getting a phone call here. With that parity line in the middle, or let's call it the 50% line. Because you can see kind of from bottom to the top over time how it kind of went up and it went down again. And with percentages, there was a bit of discussion on Twitter. Should you aim for 50%?
Or 40.
Or 40. And also it's a matter of how big is the parliament. If you have 3 people, then 2 of one gender, if that flips, then it's already a massive, you go from 33% to 66%. So I think it's always helpful to understand what's behind those percentages. But I would still argue that at least in most people's minds that I'm aware of, 50% would look like equality. I think it's the easier one to explain, and that's what I personally would go with as well. Being
Me too, yeah.
a woman, so and I know there was a discussion, I have to admit, I didn't get into all the details, but I think it's easy for men to say, well, 40% is equality, when it's like, well, you're not impacted by it. So as a woman, I'm like, no, 50% is actually much more equal than 40.
I also like the white space on the Viz too.
Yeah.
It has lots of breathing room, and it's just nice to look at.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a good balance of white space versus making it compact so that it doesn't, go across a lot of room on your screen. Okay, excellent stuff. Let's move on to EK Data, who also tunes in every week. So what I wanted to say before we look at the Viz is thank you, EK, for being here every week, because I personally can see the progress you're making in your Vizes, and I hope everyone else who's a regular can see that as well. And that's the great thing about Viz Review. If we have regulars coming back week after week, we can see the progress and you can hopefully notice it and feel it as well. Okay, so completely different design and colors. What do you think about the choice of chart here, Priya?
So I really like small multiples. I'm actually a big fan of them. So I do like how small multiples were used here, and I think the kind of overall design looks good. I was just thinking though, maybe the gradient bars might be maybe a bit kind of hard to read. So maybe it could be a line chart instead, and just kind of solid colors instead of a gradient, maybe.
Or even an area chart, so that you don't have those vertical lines, you mean, in between?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. And just making it a solid color, I think.
Yeah, I like that suggestion. It removes some of that busyness, right, for the eye. Yeah.
But I love the design of it. Like the white space on the edges is really good, and it's very neat. I just think just making it one color would just really help, and just making an area chart as well.
Yeah. So one thing I would suggest to include here, because the kind of most prominent thing I notice is that none of the countries are actually at 50%. But and maybe that's not the most important thing, but because the 50% line is included, I would maybe comment there to say, like this author, EK, considers 50% to be like what they should aim for. Hence, there is a reference line. And you'll notice none of the countries have included it, but you can see that some are doing better than others. Like just something to show why is there the 50 and why are some countries higher and some countries are lower. I think a bit of commenting would be good, just to guide people before they look at the chart to be like, oh, what should I be looking for? Because otherwise it's like, why should I care?
Yeah, that makes sense. And also maybe ordering it from highest to lowest. I think it's alphabetical right now, just to kind of have, or it could be lowest to highest, depending on, I guess, the story that's being told.
It could also be who's made the most progress, right?
Exactly, yeah.
But just, I guess, one choice. And alphabetical is fine for if you want to find a specific country. But because you're going, it's not just a single column or a single row, your brain still has to compute, okay, I'm looking for a specific country. It's 5 across and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tall. Where would I find that? It's still a little bit difficult because you also don't know what countries are included. It says Europe. Does it mean EU? Does it mean geographical Europe? So I think a different sort order, like you suggest, would be great.
But yeah, I really do like the design. It's really good that they tune in and they get feedback as well. So that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Then we have Siddhant Shetty. Okay, I'm going to open that link up. And so great to have so many people on the chat. So please do connect and feel free to comment. If you have a question, it's very helpful for us if you maybe just write question in capital letters beforehand, because sometimes I can't read through all the chat to see is that a question or a comment. So if you want to ask something, maybe make that very obvious. Okay, so Siddhant, again, totally different approach and very different colors.
Hmm.
What do you think of the color choice? Because I see the purple reflected in the viz, but I don't know what the orange is for.
Yeah, so I guess in terms of the actual design and colors, maybe just making the background slightly less intense so that it's not kind of as visible, just kind of it's a background. But then I do actually really like the chart choice. It's different. I haven't really seen many people do that, but maybe highlighting the top country or having some kind of parameter to highlight a country. And maybe state that those are countries, like each dot is a country. So I'm not sure if it says anywhere. Well, it says highlight country, I guess, but yeah, I think maybe the donut charts could just be replaced with the parameter to highlight, because I think you can change by year for the donuts, but maybe the chart on the right can just be the standalone chart for the viz instead.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I'm playing with the year selection because I'm trying to see, are there any other countries that are ever in the top five? Because it always seems to be Sweden, Finland, Belgium, Norway, and Denmark. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's correct or whether it's fixed to those five and it's just a percentage that changes.
Hmm.
Because I don't see any other countries in there. Sweden, fine. Denmark, Norway. I mean, okay, so in 2003, the Netherlands are at 36.3%. Let's go back to 2003. Okay, so the Netherlands should be in there in 2003, but Belgium is in there, which has a lower percentage than Netherlands. So that needs to be changed. So basically, I'm guessing what is missing is to add the year to context potentially.
Hmm.
But yeah, yeah, just looking at the filtering option to make sure that's correct because it's not always the same five countries in the top five. You know, I actually would say my preference is the left side. The right side
Oh,
is too much work for me because
yeah.
the years are rotated. That's a small formatting thing, but I see lots of black dots. I don't know what
Hmm.
they are because it doesn't explain it. It says highlight country, but oh my god, I have to go through 35 different countries. And why? Like, this feels like I have to dig for the story rather than someone telling me what the story is, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. I also noticed something when you hover over for the tooltips on the right hand side. There's two percentages, so one is rounded and one isn't. So if the chart was kept on the right, maybe make that consistent, or just get rid of one of those percentages and just keep the one on the bar. Maybe.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, we'll move on in the interest of time. So next is Sean Cole, and no, I don't know if he's online. Let's click on his viz, and I'm super curious to hear your. Oh, this looks very different from what was posted on Twitter. Bummer. I was hoping to comment on colors. But I'll let you comment first, and oh, this is a bit big, and maybe give me your first impression here.
Okay, so for the top kind of left bar that's kind of vertical, I like how there's two bars colored in, so Italy and Liechtenstein. But I noticed that the other bars are kind of gradient gray. So maybe if those were just a solid gray and then just the two highlighted bars as well, so that there's not such a varying gradient, I guess.
Yeah. What do you think about the amount of text that's on the viz?
Yeah, so I guess it can look a bit kind of crowded in areas. So I think adding more spacing between things, and for the text in the very middle, the text is quite big. So maybe it can be a bit smaller, and maybe the title can be big instead.
Yeah.
Um,
Because the whole, like the text on the right, like basically the text that covers the non-chart area, all seems to be really large and competing for attention, right?
yeah, and I can see that the bottom chart is an animated race chart, but I'm just wondering maybe an alternative could just be putting it on a line chart instead of having an animated race chart. What do you think?
Yes, especially because animations don't work on Tableau Public. Like you have to click each button and then it doesn't really feel very animated.
Yeah.
I mean, what could maybe be done is embedding a little GIF to have the animation go. That could be an option. But yeah, a line chart over time. Oh, no, it does work now. Okay, I pressed the play button.
Sometimes it works for me, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, I think the reason why this doesn't look like a race is because they're not smooth. Maybe they're too slow, or I'm not sure. But with all those labels, it just looks far too busy, and the labels are really squished. Like the viz needs more room, or I don't love that horizontal bar chart. The one at the bottom, what is that about? So, like,
Is that like the overall for Europe?
I'm not sure.
Sorry, the EU?
I haven't even looked at the data yet, so I don't know if there's a total line in there.
There is.
Okay.
Yeah, there's two separate ones for EU 27 and EU 28.
Okay, yeah, there's
So it could be that.
But there's no tooltip, so I'm not sure what it is. And then I don't know what the 51% is. Ah, okay. Oh, that's the population. Okay. Yeah, I think that needs to be better explained what the relationship is from 2019, 30% to 51%, because that's unclear. Okay. I do want to jump to a quick comment from the audience. So the one we had previously was the dot plot on the right side. Brandon Cornell says his wife was shouting boxplot for the dots, and she's a scientist. Now, I would say boxplot only ever use it if you're explaining it, because most people don't understand it. So if you put a boxplot anywhere, and I've only ever seen scientists use boxplot or people who use show me in Tableau, it must always be explained, because most people don't know how to read it. And I also find they're really hard to make them blend into a design kind of effortlessly. I don't know if you've used boxplots a lot, Priya?
Yeah, not often. I've only really kind of read them on other vizzes. They're not really something I use often at all.
Yeah, I never use them. Yeah, I just don't have any use for them, I guess. Let me quickly. Okay, so the next one is from Martin Bright, or Bright Martin. I'm struggling with this one because I guess my very routine brain says, where's the title? I'm guessing it's on the right, but there isn't really a title. And there's a lot going on here.
Yeah, so I also noticed that on the left chart, I think the values may not have been converted to a percentage. So I guess that would have to be changed, and then it would make more sense, because right now the axis says percentage of women, but it says 8 as the max.
And it actually makes zero sense because it's a sum of the percentages. So please, if you're summing up percentages, please don't visualize it, because it's just incorrect. Like you can't sum up, I'm looking at Sweden just randomly, you can't just add the percentages of the years over time. That makes no sense. It's not in any way something that should be visualized this way. So I'd say back to basics and start again, as harsh as it may sound, but there's no point, I guess, in us discussing the viz when the underlying approach is fundamentally flawed. So I would suggest, do that. And then on the right side, I don't know, it's all 2019 on the right side, but that needs to be also then converted to percentage rather than leaving it as a decimal number.
I like how it's minimal colors on the map. There's not like lots of different colors, so maybe apply that to a bar chart or a line chart, so it's just minimal colors, just sticking to one color as well. Just applying that same idea that was in the map to another chart.
Okay. Okay, and then we have Alex Wallach, and I know he's the one who started that discussion, and I think I actually think it's brave of him to, put himself out there and say, so in his tweet he said, I made the maybe controversial, definitely controversial decision to assume parity at 40%. You'll find some of my reasoning in the next tweets. I actually I want to start with those tweets because I'm keen to have people maybe weigh in on that. I'm always happy to have my mind broadened. So he says the size of parliaments varies significantly between 56 and close to 1,000 seats. So that means, some countries obviously with smaller populations have smaller parliaments, especially the smaller ones having only a few members more of either gender will swing the ratio easily by a few percentage points. Elections don't work like job interviews. Even if we assume 100% parity across parties and districts within a country, voter preference can result in a more female or male parliament just because of how either gender candidates are distributed. 40% is a threshold at which I think numbers above signify an equal representation. But that's the bit I don't understand. So anyway, let me finish his tweets before I go on. And the difference can largely be explained by other factors. Ratios below that are likely to be influenced to a larger degree by systemic inequalities. There is no evidence for this, just my gut. So a comment I made is, like if we take it to something not political, but something like, you have a school, 50% girls, 50% boys, 100 kids get to go on a really fun school trip, but you only let 40 girls go and you get 60 boys to come along. I don't think anyone could say that's fair. But, and I know that elections are different, and that's the point he makes as well. But I just don't quite understand how we can see 40% as being equal, especially when the population is 51% women. Then surely 50% should at least be the equal line. And I'm keen to have your perspective on this.
Yeah, I feel like from what I've seen on the Viziz this week, I feel like most people stuck with the 50%.
Yeah.
And I know that's kind of how I viewed it as well, as 50%. But hearing that opinion was really interesting, just to kind of see someone else's view. So I think for me, I would say 50.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of going from what you just said as well, 50 just makes more sense to me as well.
And so the point I see is that, well, if you don't have 50% women in a party, you can't have 50% women in parliament. So I get the connection of if you don't have equality or equity in the balance, the parity, that's the word I'm looking for. In a party, you can't necessarily guarantee that there's a fair process for getting parity in parliament. So I totally get that, and that the process might be flawed. But I think what we're looking at is we're aiming for 50%. If we aim for 40%, how are we ever going to get to 50%? We should at least aim for the 50%. That's my thinking, and that's, maybe I'm stuck there somewhere, but that's the bit I haven't been explained yet from Alex, and maybe there are others who think the same way. How can we want to aim only for, or if we say 40% is parity, then we're kind of aiming too low.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's a couple of comments. So EK said, okay, let me jump up further. Okay, so Zainab started. She says, parity is 50%. I don't see that as controversial at all. Michelle agrees. And then EK said it would be fair over several school trips. If school trips are equal, then sometimes 40 out of 100 students are girls, sometimes 40 students are going to be boys. Then it's equal. Luther says, I think the question is from his tweet. If it can swing either way, why do women have less than 50% of the seats in every country in the dataset? Well, I personally think it's because there aren't enough women yet in the political seats to even get elected into parliament. That's kind of my opinion here. And then Elias says the average should go towards 50 with such big samples as the entire EU, though it seems a bit weird to have 40 as the mean reversion point. Christine says, thank you for joining the conversation. Kevin says, I wonder if instead we say aim for 50 as the cutoff value. How about we consider aiming for a band of equality, like 50 plus minus 5? Yeah, and that's the thing. I think 50 is that's where we have parity. Of course, there's going to be kind of movement either side. But one discussion or one comment, and this is actually from Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she said, you have reached equality when no one will comment if 9 Supreme Court judges are all women. And I totally agree, because it sounds like, what? That's not logical. But no one bothered to say anything when it was all men. And if we were ever going to get to a point where it's all women, all hell will break loose. And I think that's the point here as well, right? If we were to have 60% women and 40%, that shouldn't be a problem if the past 5,000 years of male dominance in these things have not been a problem either. So it should be 50-50, but it should also not be a challenge for people's thinking if suddenly there are more women in some positions than men, because it's been the other way for so many years. So that's why I think it has to be that the goal is 50-50. And sure, it swings both ways, but it's only been one way forever. So that's my position.
No, I think that makes sense, and yeah, that's kind of how I see it as well.
Okay, good. Yes, and Kimberly makes a good point there, and I think this goes in line with what I just said. If Alex's theory were correct, we would sometimes see 40% male and 60% female, and that would be equal. But we don't see that. Also, I don't think we should do data analysis based on our gut. I totally agree, because that's why we have data, right? Because we don't want to do gut stuff. But I'm really happy that he is, brave enough to put his opinion out there and to have it challenged and all of that. So, okay, so now let's look at his viz. And I'm going to hand over to you because I've done a lot of talking. Priya, let's hear what you have to say.
Okay, so I think this is a very interesting way of visualizing it. So every dot is a year, I believe. So a year for that country. And I can see this kind of a gradient effect on the colors. But I'm just wondering if maybe it shouldn't be a gradient and just kind of solid colors. So maybe, I don't know, the top country could be a certain color and the rest could be a neutral color. Or maybe the most recent year could be one color and then the first year could be a different color, but everything else could be gray. Just to kind of, because right now I'm not really sure what's being highlighted, I guess. I don't think it says anywhere.
Yeah, and I've just hovered. So I love the idea of doing it this way. It makes me think a bit of an abacus. And you can see kind of leaps, assuming that they kind of go in a straight line from left to right, 2003 to 2019. But I don't know what year each dot relates to, because when I hover, the tooltip just has a line chart, which I don't think is helpful. At least tell me what year I'm now hovering over, because then I could see the big jumps. Then I would know, for example, I'm looking at Italy more like on the left side, and I'm hovering and I can see that there's been a leap, but I don't know what the years are because I can't interact with the viz in tooltips, and I also don't get the information from the tooltip itself.
Yeah, sense. And then we don't know if it's the most recent, the highest value. It might be the 2003, so we can't really see that without having that year on it. So that makes sense. But yeah, having that year and then being able to kind of compare, I think would help.
Yeah.
And maybe using color to show the most recent year, maybe.
And Kimberly says that, she also points out that it looks like linear progress, whereas there's ups and downs. So maybe one thing Alex could try is like spark lines, so that you can see in a very small space the progress or backwards progress made in countries over time.
Yep.
Okay. Great. And really enjoying the discussion, even though we have to obviously do a little bit over the comments. Now, let me go back to my collection. And then we move on to Javeed Pasha. Let me put in his link. And very keen to get your opinion on the color choices here.
So in terms of the colors, I was just going to say that maybe they're a bit too saturated, but I really do love the design, the white space around it, and the small multiples. But I feel like maybe just kind of decreasing the saturation of the colors so they're kind of easier on the eyes would help. But I saw this. I saw this already, and I really did like the design of it. It's just a shame that on Tableau Public the area charts kind of have lines. Can you see that as well
Yes,
on your end?
I see the lines, yeah.
But yeah, I really do like this fizz. And maybe in terms of the background color, it's just very dark black. Maybe just making that a slightly lighter black would probably help too.
Yeah, I agree with the points that you've made. And with the saturation of the color, I think I'm okay if one of the colors pops, but they're both really intense. And maybe the color for men, because this is a story about women, supposedly, making that more faded, like more kind of pastel, maybe color. I don't mind if it's this kind of green, but it should be less saturated. And it also suggests, because there are those vertical lines, I don't know why, it could be a display issue, because in some countries they are there for the whole time or half the chart. But what I find is the 50% line, because it's dotted, it makes it extra busy. So making it a solid line, but a thin one, could reduce some of the busyness. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, I really do like this one.
Yeah. I like the how
the
to read at the top. I just find that the arrows basically cross out a lot of.
Yeah.
So maybe making it like not having the white lines go through.
Just like kind of on the side of it.
Just
I
on the
guess.
side, yeah, with the labeling. Yeah. Okay. All right. And then we have Trina Hertman. I don't think I've come across her before in Makeover Monday, or at least not in this review. So she has created a line chart with the area in between the lines shaders. And I love this idea. I think that's a really cool way to look at this data.
Yeah, I remember seeing this and just I really love how that gap is emphasized. It's really powerful. And I just really love this kind of take on the data as well.
Yeah. And
it's very neat.
It is. And what I like is that it really shows, she has it in the title, gender gaps. And it literally is a gap. It's visualized as a gap. And you can see how in Sweden, throughout all those years, it's been fairly close. And as we go further down the list, there are bigger and bigger gaps. And this is not so much, it's not so much about the 50% line. It's more, visually how close they are. And I guess how much gender opposition, let's call it, the women have in their parliaments.
It definitely kind of shows the data in a different way. So I really like that as well.
Yeah. Well done, Trina. Okay. And then we have Megan V. And this is a heat map, which I hadn't one of the first ones I noticed. And here we go. So the first thing I thought of, because we had done data sets in the past where people used exactly these colors and heat maps, is coal and green energy. That was my first thought. And
yeah,
I guess the challenge is, where is the midpoint? Because the midpoint seems to be around 24%, I would guess, because 0 is gray and 48.9% is green. What makes all those countries green? Because visually it looks like, yeah, they're doing great. Well, no, not really. Because if I look at North Macedonia in 2007, it's 30%. Why is that green? I'm not sure what you would suggest there.
Do you think making the green darker on the scale would help? So there's at least some variation, or?
I guess I would go with a scale that goes from 0 to 100, where the midpoint is 50, because that's what we're aiming for. Which will make it look very, very different, but maybe there could be the 50 plus minus 5, so that you see the range of who is getting close to parity and who is really far away.
Yeah, I think that would work. That's a good idea. And I do like how they kind of used a different chart, because I wouldn't have really thought of using a heat map. So, and I definitely didn't see many. So yeah, that's interesting to try and visualize it with a heat map.
Yeah, definitely. And then a good suggestion from Kimberly here: remove Switzerland, because there is no data and it makes it look really bad. And I would suggest in terms of formatting, making the country names right aligned so that they're all, neatly finishing on the right side. And maybe saying that, this is like what the sort order is, because people might look at the list of country names and think, oh, these are not alphabetical. Like, I mean, you can see it being sorted in a certain way, but as a non-data person, you wouldn't know. And I wonder if countries that have no data for certain years, whether you could make those just white so that it's more obvious it's a gap. Because all the really dark blue is like there is just no data, because I'm sure there would be a number otherwise. Yeah. Okay. And next up we have Vinay, and there's a link. Go easy on the hashtags, people, because it just makes your tweets look a bit difficult to navigate and actually find the viz itself. Okay. So it says women power in parliament, and it has a picture of the London skyline. And it doesn't say anything about the countries we're looking at. It has a lot of text, but it doesn't mention Europe. It doesn't mention any countries or anything. And it has a very interesting color scale. What would you suggest here?
Yeah, so I do like when a viz has that context on the side, but like you said, maybe mentioning kind of the countries themselves, that it's part of the EU, and maybe having that in the title as well to actually kind of show what the viz is about. And also, I just noticed that the title, Parliaments, is red, but then I guess it's kind of maybe misleading because it's all about parliaments and governments. So usually you'd highlight to kind of refer to what's in the viz. So maybe parliaments doesn't need to be coloured in the title. And I was also just thinking maybe having so many colours on the scale, maybe just limiting it to 2.
Mm-hmm.
So it's less busy. I do like how size was used though, but maybe only the top 3 countries could be big and the rest could be the same size, maybe just to highlight them, and maybe just highlight the top ones in a certain color, maybe.
Yeah.
What do you think?
For me, this is a bit busy with no clear message. So it says women power in parliaments. It's not about, I mean, of course, ultimately it's about power, but this is just about how many women are in parliament rather than their power, because, what do we know what positions are more powerful than others? Because there's certainly a hierarchy, I have no doubt. I find the image of London skyline confusing because there's no reference to UK or England or anything like that, and so the text, I don't want to read the text because it feels like a lot of work. I don't see any kind of numbers, or like everything is bold, it's quite large, and the centered formatting just doesn't work for me. So as a first impression, I'm like, I don't want to read that. I'm just looking at the viz, but I don't know what to do with it because there's no instructions, there's no description, there's no labels, and there's just 2003, 2019. So this does not make me want to interact because there's literally no guidance. I would say get rid of the background, get rid of the image, and focus on having a message for your viz, because otherwise you miss a huge opportunity to, tell people something because they might just switch off.
Yeah, I think if you remove the image, then the actual chart will be the main focal point, and it will just look a bit cleaner as well.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the background is needed. The chart can just be the visual focus, and it will look just a lot cleaner.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, then we have Ashley Zhang, and I added hers because she has created a slope chart, which I didn't see many of this week. At least not in the Viz Review hashtag, and I like having a bit of variety in here. And basically looking at what is the state of percentages in 2017 compared to 2019, and keen to hear what you think of the chart choice and like how it's presented.
Yeah, so I didn't really see many slope charts either, and I quite like how Ashley took a different kind of turn with this, because it's following 5 countries highlighted in orange have fewer women than 2010. So it's kind of a different story here. It's the 5 countries that have gone down since 2010, and they're highlighted, and it's very simple and effective in that way. I really like when just one thing is highlighted like that. I just noticed though, on the left-hand side, there's quite a big gap on the chart. So if that was just kind of brought in a bit, so that the actual lines were closer to the y-axis, I think that would work. And I just really like how there's certain lines highlighted, because I don't think I've seen anyone else do this particular story. So it was interesting.
Yeah, I really like the simplicity of it. I agree, making it more narrow, because it takes up a lot of space, but the empty sides, on the left and right. And a suggestion I would make is making the axis go to just over 50%, but then having a 50% line at the top, so that you can see none of them have actually reached 50%, but to have it there as a visual reference.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then a suggestion from Brandon is to highlight the word orange in the title in that same orange. And that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
All right. And Sherry Gao, and she created a line chart with... Oh, what the hell happened here?
Yeah, I don't think the link works.
Okay, well, we'll look at the image. Seats held by women in national parliaments. So this has a bit of a description of, what the data is about, but focusing on Portugal, France, and Italy, where there's been, I guess, more of an increase than in other countries. But admittedly, at least the bottom 2 lines, I don't know which ones they are. I think it's France and Italy. They started at a fairly low rate. So they have seen more progress than probably other countries. I'm guessing that's the analysis.
Yeah, and this actually reminds me of the other viz that we just looked at because of the orange highlight. But in terms of the design, again, I like how those 3 countries are highlighted. But with the grey lines, maybe making those thinner and lighter to make the 3 orange lines stand out more. I think that would kind of make them more visible as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's actually something I was thinking of as well, making the grey lines thinner, because then also you can see them more clearly because they're not kind of clumping together. And the suggestion I would make is to have the percentages on the left maybe just every 10% rather than every 5%. Just looks a bit cleaner. And again, potentially adding a reference line at 50% to say, this is where we would have true parity, if that's what you agree with. I'd also add a bit of space under the text but before the viz. So you could put in a space or, a blank or a text of probably suggest 20 to 30 point size in height, just to space it out a bit.
And maybe some padding just around the edges too, in general.
Yeah. Okay. Great stuff. So then we have Eduardo, who I think we reviewed last week as well. And here, I'm keen to hear your opinion on the colours, because I have one, and I'm keen to hear what you think.
So with this one, I think, I like how simple it is, again, small multiples, which I love, but because the lines are purple and the text is green, it might be too much color. So maybe those labels should be, black or gray instead. And then it would just kind of look a bit more subtle, I guess. What do you think?
Totally agree. I don't understand why the text is green, because green to me has, I would assume it has a meaning, because purple means women. And I can see that red means there is a decrease in the percentage of women. So I'm wondering what green means. And it doesn't seem to mean anything, which means get rid of it. So yeah, I agree with you. So maybe a dark grey or some sort of, medium grey, so you can read it easily, but it's not the focus. I like that he's got the year at the bottom, but on the 2 right columns, the years are not there. So I think that would be helpful as a reference point to just have those years repeated there as well. So Sarah suggests green means increase. That's a good point. I still think it's too much color.
Yeah, maybe just having the decreases in red would be enough, just to kind of simplify the color scheme, I think.
Or even have everything in grey, but just the number itself in red
Yeah.
or red or green. But I would never use red and green together anyway. I think I've said that before. Because of the colorblind implications there. Maybe even just using a little up and down arrow instead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think also everything seems very bold and big. I'd reduce the boldness of the subtitle, and maybe in there you could say the percentage change is compared to 2003, because then you don't need to repeat it in every single country, and the number will neatly fit just under the country name in the center.
Yeah, I noticed actually that some of them are versus 2004.
Maybe
So I'm
they didn't
guessing
have data
some of the
in
data
2003.
starts then. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. Or it could be, it's versus 2003 unless there was no data, in which case it's the first year data existed. Or it could just be in general, it's compared to the first year when there was data available, which then covers all the different years that are the option. Okay. This is now massive. Let me just reduce the size a bit. Okay. And then we move on to Gorazd, and I know he gets a lot of feedback on this review, but he created a chart that I think looks different because he's got this kind of half-shaped donut / gauge chart. Do you think that works in this case?
So I'm guessing the whole viz is just about 2019, right? I think. So I think kind of reiterating what we said before, I like how it's just two colors. I do like that. And I like how the highlight color is brighter. But in terms of the chart choice, I think that's just probably using the field for just EU in total. I actually saw some people who did like a half donut chart, and maybe it just having the bar chart alone would be enough. Maybe we don't need that half donut chart. What do you think?
I think I like the donut because it looks a little bit like a parliamentary layout with, kind of everyone in a half circle.
Yeah.
What I would suggest again, maybe a super thin line in white that shows the 50%. To show like, okay, these seats are still taken up by men who maybe should hand them over, or who should be challenged in a fair election, which, maybe the men are still voted in, but like there's still room to improve. I like the bar chart. I think it looks quite busy because everything is bold and really intense, and the colors are very saturated, especially the purple. It does make my eyes hurt. I would use a different shade of purple. And I would probably change, so you could make the grey lighter, the grey that represents men, or the missing percentage, and then keep the color for the country labels in black, but make it not bold, or make it a light font. And then my suggestion for the percentages is to actually go to 1 decimal point, because if you look at Croatia and Romania, they're both at 20%, but Croatia is slightly longer than Romania. So that makes me think there's something I'm not being told. So add the percentage points so we have more of that detail.
Yeah. And also, I was just wondering, with the paragraphs, women is highlighted in purple every time. Maybe it could just be highlighted for the question at the bottom, just once. What do you think?
Yeah, especially because it's highlighted. I like the subtitle under the title, which is title is a quote, and I really like that. And then the subtitle, if it's highlighted there, that's enough. Then it could, be not highlighted until maybe the end again. And then just checking for typos. So does this serious underrepresentation of women undermine, without the S, the legitimacy of the contemporary democratic ideal? I don't know if it undermines it. It just means get it sorted, or it will undermine it. But I guess there's been, slow progress. So maybe by now we're saying, yep, it's undermined. Yeah. Okay. Let's see how many more we can. So we've got 9 minutes left. Let's see how many we can go through. Aman is next on our list, and his viz I added because I did want to discuss it. or discuss kind of the idea behind it. I'll let you start. I need to zoom out. It's not a big viz, but it takes a lot of space because the charts are massive, but the font is quite small. Okay, go ahead.
So I really like the design of this viz. I like how it's very simple. And I like how it focuses on France and Italy, which had the kind of biggest difference from 2003 to 2019. So I like that. And I like how the title is colored as well to reflect the countries. And the two charts at the top, I think those look good. But I think for the one at the bottom, the kind of lines of the other countries are maybe a bit too hidden.
Yeah.
Maybe they should be a bit more visible, because I know we're just highlighting the two countries, but it's still good to kind of see the other ones. So maybe make them a bit lighter. Yeah. What do you think?
So I agree, and I also agree with Brandon, who says, it's a very clear story, but I don't actually agree with the story. Because shouldn't we be more like Sweden, who've always been at the top anyway, and are so close to 50%? Like, I know it's cool that France and Italy made so much progress in those 16 or 17 years, but they started at a very low rate. So it's, it's kind of like saying, for example, I had an injury, I didn't run for 4 months. So now when I start running, I'm going to make a lot of progress in the beginning, but that doesn't mean I'm great. I'll be great when I get to the point where it's hard to make progress because I'm already so good. So I think, and I totally get what they're doing here, but I think I would rather it be like Sweden, who've had so much more effort over the past decade to stay at the top, than to be like France, who started at 12% and they're now at 37, but they're only at 37. So I understand it's about the progress, but I think there are countries we should aim to be like more than these two, even though they're heading in the right direction.
No, that's exactly right. Maybe a title change to change the story a little bit would help.
Yeah. And also, yes, I agree with the comments in the chat. This is a percentage increase from 1%, from one percentage to another percentage, which could be really hard. So you could, instead of saying plus 220%, it could be plus 25 percentage points, which is the difference between 37 and 12. Yeah, but it could be hard to say. And also, going back to my previous point, if you have, let's say, your parliament is 100 people, just for simplicity, going from 12 women to 37 is much easier than going from, let's say, 45 to 50, because those last 5 seats are probably much harder to win because you probably have a system behind it that already gets a lot of women into these positions. So it might then come to the point that Alex was trying to make, that I think he was trying to make, where depending on who is in the parties is then determining, like how much progress you can actually make in getting women into these parliamentary positions. So, yeah, I think I'll stop there before I make it too confusing. But in terms of design, yeah, I agree. And I think what we're missing here is, it's very tiny at the bottom. So Aman, I do see there's the data and his name included. So that's great. I just didn't scroll down far enough.
But I love the white space on this one as well.
Yeah.
It looks very neat and clean.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's see if we can, how many do we have left? Okay, we won't make them all, but I actually want to skip the next one and go to Schubert because it's packed bubbles and it makes me want to look at it because it's kind of cool how it's moving. Let's see if I can make this a bit bigger. Okay.
I think it's using D3JS. Yeah, it is.
I mean, that's when they're fun, those bubbles, because it actually makes me think of bubbles. They're moving, they're bouncing around. Let's have a look. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I like how it's fun and interactive. I'm a big fan of D3JS. I think with packed bubbles, either in Tableau or here, it's just a bit difficult to kind of compare. So here it's kind of difficult to compare the different sizes, but it's very fun to play around with.
Yeah, then also because there's some blue text, proportion of women in parliaments. Many countries are still far from reaching gender representation. So Finland is in that same blue that says many countries are still far, but they're at 47%, they're second rank. So I don't understand the use of color here. Is it random? Is it not? I don't know. So Turkey, Greece, North Macedonia, Netherlands, or maybe I'm looking at the wrong blue because I looked at the darkest, or the really dark turquoise, the kind of biggest bubble in the dark turquoise, and then Sweden is in the other blue, and they're ranked number 1. So I don't understand that part, but like it's a bit hard to interact with because you have to click. There's nothing on hover. I would love if there was information on hover, like when I click on it, there's information. I wish that was on hover so I don't have to click on every single bubble, because as soon as I click, the others have moved and I'm like, oh, I wanted to look at the one next to it, but it's gone somewhere else now. So that makes it a bit difficult. Yeah. But apart from that, I think it's fun. Okay. And then we have Christine Wallinger, and she is doing her first data viz in Tableau. So welcome, Christine. And I believe she's on the live stream. So let's see what feedback we have for her, because this is also a type of viz that we haven't seen so far today. Let me blow it up. What do you think? Because you like small multiples, and here we have a tile map compared with small multiples.
Yes, I honestly think this is better than my first viz that I made. So very well done, Christine. So I think when it comes to like a hex map like this for Europe, I think maybe it's a bit difficult to tell it's Europe. What do you think?
Yeah, that's, I think, the challenge of doing tiled maps with anything other than the US, because the US like so neatly fits because of how the states were shaped. But it's difficult with Europe because some countries are so small, and then others are kind of, like when I look at Scandinavia, they're kind of so stretched and far in the north. So it's hard to see the shape, especially with the gaps in between, because there are no gaps between these countries. So I would, if you could possibly do it, push them together so that all the continental countries are pushed together. And then, Scandinavia
and maybe make
as well.
the lines thinner.
Make the lines thinner, and maybe not have the lines in 2 colors, because we have Spain in blue. I don't know what the colors are, but again, should any country be kind of above like they're not above the 50, but I don't know, I don't really know, but it makes it look very busy with the 2 colored, or the gradient.
Yeah, I think just simplifying the colors, but yeah, I definitely never made a hex map for my first viz, so very well done for that. Yeah, I just think making those small adjustments and, like Eva said, just bringing them close together, I think that would help as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So well done on your first viz, and make sure, Christine, to put your name somewhere on the viz so that people know that it was created by you. Okay, I think we can do one more, and the last one I want to make Christoph's, because it was inspired by Agatha. This is really her signature style. Let me. Oh, why am I? Oh, here we go. Need to make it smaller again, and it's interesting because what I love here is that circle of women and men icons that just show how many there are. So this is for France versus EU, and I think you can click on a different line and nothing happens. Okay, maybe not then. I think that would be cool if the line chart was interactive.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure.
I think it looks so clean, doesn't it?
It does. Now, do you find so with this? Oh, what are they called? Not muffin top. Like these charts. There's something food related, right?
Yeah, was it pudding chart?
Pudding chart, right? Not muffin top. Oh my god, Eva. So they do make me think, not so much with these symbols, but when they're done with dots, they make me think a bit of a Petri dish. But One thing I struggle with here is to see how much would be 50%. It's nice that he's filled it up from the bottom rather than having it kind of randomly. I'm just not sure. I mean, I can see it's less than 50%, but it's not so obvious to me, and it might just be the icons that I used.
Yeah. Do you think having a line, but then I guess some of those people will be kind of cut in half if you put a
Yeah.
line?
Well, I wonder actually whether it's easier as dots, because if you use the two
Yeah.
colors, you would still differentiate between men and women. And in opposition to what I just said about the Petri dish, I think if they're all in one cluster rather than randomly dotted throughout, it wouldn't look like a Petri dish.
Yeah.
One thing I don't understand, and it's perfectly fine to focus on France. Personally, I wonder why France, because I don't see any, like, the quote at the top is from someone who's the founder of Britain's 50-50 parliament. So I don't understand why we're looking at France. There's no specific commentary around France, why it's the focus of the story.
Yeah, I'm interested about that too, because I thought it was Italy that had the kind of biggest difference. So yeah, maybe just explaining why the focus is on France, that would help. But just overall, I think this is a very clean and just very nice vase. I just love how the colors are very simple, and
Yeah.
it's just it's really good.
Definitely. Okay. With that, I'm going to bring us back. Are you camera ready? I'm sure you always look fabulous, but I just wanted to make sure. So lighting has changed. We're looking at almost dark skies outside. Thank you for joining me, Priya. That was really fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Yeah. Oh, and there's a good suggestion from Kimberly. She's on fire today. For the visit we just had, you could have 50% of the icons be a third color. So you could have the men 50% and the women 37, and then whatever's the one that should be up for grabs in a different color. So that's a good idea.
Yeah, I like that.
And if everyone who's on the chat would like to leave some parting comments, some feedback for Priya, I mean, a clap, obviously, feel free to comment with a little emoji with. God, I can't talk today. Okay, feel free to leave a comment in emoji format for Priya to show your appreciation or how you found her feedback. And we're going to be back together next week, right? So
Yay!
Next week, Wednesday. Yay! I don't know yet what the topic is. No, I do know what the topic is because Andy and I discussed it. But yeah, that's obviously going to be revealed on Sunday. And a little ask for everyone. I mean, maybe you can share your experience briefly. When you have participated and you've been given feedback, how did you normally implement it? Like, what was your process there for anyone who finds it helpful?
Yeah, so especially when I was just beginning, I kind of made notes about what I should do the next time. So, for example, there was a chart that I put pizza icons on. I definitely didn't do that the next time.
Yeah.
So I just made sure to just keep it simple and just kind of, I think it helps to make those notes and then just kind of keep them in mind for the next time. That kind of helped me a lot.
Yeah, excellent. So I know sometimes it can probably feel a bit overwhelming when you have your own feedback, but also, 10 other people's feedback and like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Take the stuff that makes most sense to you and also feel free to just do the things that are easy. Because I think it then helps you next week to think, oh, what would they say about that? What would Eva and Priya tell me if they saw my viz right now? So keep that in mind. Now, I'm pleased to say there's lots of hand clapping, heart-shaped eyes, 100% high five. So people are very excited with your feedback. Thank you for joining. And then we'll be back next week, Wednesday, 5 p.m.
Great, I'll see you all there.
Okay.
And thank you so much again.
Welcome. Take care, everybody, and have a good day.